Well, the Battle of Spotsylvania. Um, as the two armies fled from the forest fire slash battle of the wilderness, uh, both sides were pretty tired. Grant had taken a pretty bad beating up at the wilderness, and I think most Union generals, or most generals, period, would have maybe pulled their army back and rested. But Grant instead heads for a crossroads called Spotsylvania. Now, the trick is because Grant's army is maybe about 40% bigger than Lee's army, if Grant can get to that crossroads and make a turn, either Lee has to fight him in the open or he's got to retreat back into Richmond, and basically it turns into a siege. So Lee, on the other hand, is somehow or another, he knew that Grant, despite the beating that Grant took in the wilderness, somehow or another, Lee said, knew that Grant was heading for the spots, would head for Spotsylvania. In fact, he starts sending troops there, even as the Battle of the Wilderness is winding down. Lee's men get there by that much. Literally 15 or 20 minutes before Grant's men get there. And they dig in right around that crossroads. Now, neither army is moving very quickly because they're really tired. And you would be too if you'd gone through the Battle of the Wilderness. And pretty soon they're formed like a canopy around the crossroads. Lee's men on the inside, Grant's men on the outside. There's a little section of Lee's line which has a bend in it. It's called the mule shoe. Grant, seeing that sticking out, like that, Grant throws about everything he's got at the mule shoe. Lee, at that point, is just getting ready to leave the mule shoe. So as Grant's men are coming in, Lee's men are going out. Turns out that nobody had prepared for an instant breakthrough. And so Grant's men get tremendously disorganized. Lee, realizing what has happened, which is that he's had about half a mile wide hole blown into his lines, rallies his men, and his generals rally their men, and they tack back. And of course, now the Union have Confederate soldiers coming at them from three sides because they're kind of sticking through the trenches there. Both armies race back to the trenches and start to fight. How long the fight over the mule shoe lasted, it's called the bloody angle oftentimes. How long the fight over the mule shoe lasted is anybody's guess. It's at least 18 hours, maybe as long as 24 hours in a heavy rain. The two armies were so close together that, they could have shaken hands. Not that they were shaking hands. And then, the only thing that kept both armies from completely obliterating each other is everybody was loading and firing so fast that they weren't taking aim. They mowed down a forest with fire. In the Smithsonian, there's a 22-inch tree that is cut, completely cut in half by the fire. And so anyway, at one point they rolled up about 20 cannon. The Union rolled about 20 cannon and just began to fire, from feet away from the Confederates. The gunners don't stay alive very long, but they kill a lot of Confederates. No, you cannot find a good description of what happened in the battle in the mule shoe. Nobody could make any sense of what was going on. It was just chaos and killing and endless killing. And some, body, wounded man, body. They'd find stacks of bodies, 4 and 5 bodies high. And some of those bodies would have been hit so many times that they would just simply disintegrate. So it's just, there is no coherent account of what happened, what really happened in the mule shoe. Finally, Lee manages to dig a trench behind it. Around 4 a.m., his men pull back to it. 4 a.m., anybody's guess. And then they continue fighting along the new line that Lee has dug in around that big sweeping canopy around it. It goes on, as I say, from May 9th, 1864 to May 21st, 1864. And it's a horrible thing. It's one of the worst battles, if you can call it a battle, ever held in the United States, or in the Western Hemisphere for that matter. I think really the real damage is this: between May 9th and May 21st. There were a lot of places for brave soldiers to be brave, and therefore your brave soldiers got killed. There were lots of places for your good leaders to lead, lots of them. So your good leaders get killed. By the time the fighting is over at Spotsylvania, which is more or less on May 21st, there's never been a minute in which somebody hasn't been fighting someplace. And your good soldiers are dead or wounded, and your good leaders are dead or wounded. The armies that reach Spotsylvania on May 9th are not the armies that leave Spotsylvania on May 21st. I've seen pictures of how many officers, and we're talking about majors and captains and lieutenants, and not generals, but your field officers, just how many were killed there. It's staggering. Both armies basically decapitated themselves in that 12-day stretch. So the end result, therefore, is that people were simply pushed beyond endurance. The personnel of the armies was destroyed. There was a study done in the Italian campaign of World War II, which showed that the average soldier could make it about 80 hours in combat, and then they would, become somewhat unglued. I think the longest they have, most combat any one soldier took that they could find, I remember correctly, was around 200 hours. Well, you're talking about 21 days, you're talking about 12 days. And some of these soldiers are going to be up on that front line an awful lot. And so essentially, the armies that roll out of there are just simply mentally obliterated and physically beyond exhausted. Lee has lost all his top string commanders. Longstreet, of course, was shot in the wilderness. Ewell is becoming unable to make decisions. A.P. Hill, who may have had syphilis, suffers from some unknown illness and basically has to stay way behind the lines. Grant issues orders that if a general shows signs of coming apart, he's to be relieved. It's just an incredible disaster that befalls both armies. It's worse than Gettysburg. Gettysburg was over in 3 days. This was endless. And when you read about Spotsylvania, which, by the way, nobody wins, when you read about Spotsylvania, what you really don't read about, at least I've never seen much written about it, when you leave Spotsylvania, these armies are more mobs, exhausted mobs, than they are armies. And their leaders are too tired to lead them anymore. And yet Grant is going to send his men down toward a place called the North Anna. And Lee, who probably has had a heart attack, or will have one in just the next few days, Lee is he's riding in a carriage at this point. Lee is going to take his army to North Anna because that's where Lee, quite correctly, believes Grant is headed. And Lee is going to set up a trap for Grant at the North Anna, one which is not going to spring, in large part because Lee is sick and his generals are either second-rate or very tired. Not that Grant does well at North Anna either. Well, if you like these videos, please feel free to subscribe. My blog is at timblessing.com, and Twitter at blessti, BLESSTI. So I hope we get to see you all soon, and I hope everybody stays What's it saying? Healthy, wealthy, and wise. Well, wealthy isn't going to happen, and wise is left out. So let's hope that healthy makes it. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.